Some games have a legacy that can last many years. Some games have money thrown at them in hopes that they regain their launch numbers. Some succeed, but most fail. Then there's games that just get better and better as the years go on, with a legacy that spans almost a decade. Thousands of loyal fans, and at the time developed by a no-name indie studio no less. Frequent content updates, engaging exploration, fun, and rewarding combat. This is Terraria, and it's a game. Terraria is a wonderful existence that I've played since launch. It's a game with a storied history that started out as a sort of fun little exploration-based side-scroller. Now that its final content update is out, it's time to review the damn thing, because it's not going to get much more complete than this. So let's take it back a bit and start with the beginning. Choose a character from a variety of, not going to look at this again because I covered it with armor, frog legs, and floaty tubes. Generate a world for you to plunder and pillage, and enter it. Depending on what mode you've chosen, you'll awaken a land of wonderment and exploration.
What on fucking God's green earth is that?
Or you'll wake up in a fresh hell, tailored perfectly to make you want to rip your hair out. There's 4 choices for how worlds are generated. Journey, which is basically game's journalist difficulty. Classic, which is a one-size-fits-all experience. Expert, where the enemies hit hard and you hit like a wet noodle. And finally, the new difficulty, which I 100% do not recommend playing. Master Mode.
では十分近づくがよい。一気にとどめを刺してくれる。
You're joking! Straight into the final phase. And I killed it!
I've played Terraria for years, but no amount of preparation could save me from the enemies and bosses that anally anguished me. I was never the same after Master Mode. Besides my rising death count, each difficulty option will reward you with goodies only available to their modes. Except for Master Mode, the only thing worthwhile there is the mounts, and even then, they're not worth the agony. Terraria is a very personal experience. You take the game at your own pace. You could spend hours building a house and making it just perfect. 5 minutes building something I'd find my local homeless man living in, or you could just not even bother and say fuck it. The same goes for everything else that you do. But most of the time, your first instinct is to replace the shitty dildo that you've been gifted with a real weapon, like the purple clubberfish. You might dig down and find some shiny dirt to craft armor and weapons with, get some wood from a tree, or maybe just explore the surface. There's a lot of options at your disposal.
I found a lost girl who has 750 health. You wanna use your wormhole potion and come check this out?
Oh, Jesus.
Area. Aha, I fucking knew it. No! Oh god! Oh.
Terraria gives you so much choice in how you approach its exploration and encounters. However, as you go up in the difficulties, you are presented with a myriad of choices, so long as each of these choices is accompanied by a healthy dose of optimization. Make no mistake, Terraria can be fucking difficult. Thankfully, it at least lets you decide how hard it is. In order to get stronger, you gotta look around and actually explore. Most of the items in the game aren't simply crafted, but rather found. If you're new to Terraria, that's everything you need to know. Literally. So don't watch any more lest you spoil it for yourself. Oh, one last bit of advice. Always go and explore the dungeon first. That is always a pro gamer move. Terraria is separated into 3 distinct phases, each with their own equipments, bosses, and gameplay. The scope of the game expands as you continue up through the phases. Each of these phases is separated by a barrier of some sort in the form of a boss fight.
Are you kidding?
These bosses are the gatekeepers to that sweet, sweet loot and the next mode. Each of these thresholds will reset the progression of the character and test the skills you've learned at each stage of the game, with one notable exception. A thing I really love about this style of getting stronger is that despite the game resetting you back to square one and adding new and dangerous enemies at each stage, is that the overall experience becomes harder, better, faster. Genuinely, the game gets quicker. Every enemy and ability you encounter or use speeds up the nature of the game. It goes from a 2D side-scrolling Minecraft to a high-octane bullet hell. Aside from essential bosses that are required to be killed, there's a couple optional bosses. Most of these are pretty goddamn hard, at least in Master Mode they are, but it's not like you're without help. If you have friends and they're curious about Terraria, you should play it with them. The game's fun on its own, but it is legendary with others. Even if you don't have friends, there's other more methodical methods to getting stronger. You'll need every advantage, every useful potion, every NPC collected, every powerful item, weapon, accessory, or armor you can get your grubby little pixels on that leads up to the next boss.
Oh, she even gave me the other item.
Explore everything and do all you can before you try to brave that next skill check. The last thing you want to do is fight one of the mechanical bosses right when you enter hard mode.
I never asked for this.
Now seems like a good time to bring up the class archetypes you'll end up falling into. In pre-hard mode, the class system really doesn't rear its head at any point. Most of pre-hard mode is spent finding good items and just using them, regardless of what damage type or playstyle they fit into. At this point in the game, the damage numbers are so low that you don't have to panic about min-maxing so much. You mainly need a series of useful options that work around what you need at the time. Most people at this stage of the game might have a spell, a sword, a bow, and maybe even a summon if they have one by then, purely just because they may be needed. However, once you reach hard mode, you'll start to settle into a subclass, melee, ranged, or magical. There's no other classes, nope, not even one. Each class has its own playstyle and fine. There's also a summoner, but it has its own issues. As I was saying, each class presents their own playstyle, and have a variety of options and weapons at their disposal. Melee doesn't always have to melee, for instance. He has some ranged options, even some of the best items in the game. And, as of Journey's End, flails have gotten a rework and are 1000% more potent. Ranger classes use something ingenious called arrows and bullets. Sometimes other stuff. Obviously. Unlike melee though, pretty much every weapon rangers get access to is purely ranged. No diversity of range, just diversity of shooting stuff. And that's fine by me. Magic is by far my favorite class. Always incredibly fun to play. You'll need potions to use them effectively. What's amazing about magic, and the greatest allure of using it, is the sheer variety of spells at your disposal. Unlike the melee or ranged classes where you only occasionally get access to unique items, and others which are mostly just variations on existing weapons. Swords are always swords, bows are always bows. Magic remains incredibly fresh because most of the spells in the game function in a truly unique fashion to the rest of the items and weapons available to other classes. There's obviously basic iterations of these, like the magic staves at the start of the game, vile thorn weapons, and even the magic missiles, scepters, and Mario Fireball items. But that's all. There's so many magic weapons and they all play so very differently. It almost feels like a handicap at times trying to play another class. There's a magic weapon that attacks in 3 different ways. How can other classes compete? They don't, especially when you consider the final class. Summoner, which is a wild card in a way. With the way he's implemented, he feels like an afterthought until the end of the game. So still an afterthought. The last update buffed him up a bit and helped fill out his item list, but that doesn't change the core of the issue. Playing Summoner is like shooting yourself in the foot. Allow me to explain. The summons you get are your primary source of damage. They work autonomously most of the time. Thanks to the new update, you also now have a complementary weapon that fails to be as useful as just using another class's weapon. The whips come with a trait that commands your summons to attack a specific target. But from my own use, 100% of the time, this worked like 30% of the time, which is too confusing for me to understand and is exactly what it's like using the damn things. Summoners in pre-hard mode have access to 1 armor that helps them and 5 summon options. However, one of the most useful pre-hard mode summons you can get is such a fuck around to acquire that you might as well just bung it off and realize you'll never actually get it. It drops from 2 enemies that have a chance of being fished up during an event that has a chance of spawning, and the item has a 4% chance to actually drop from these 2 incredibly dangerous and potent one-shot level enemies. This is me trying to farm them for the first time.
Oh my god.
To compare, magic users get access to 3 or so very easily acquired magic items that are good throughout all of pre-hard mode, and also probably have the easiest method to kill the wall of flesh on master mode. How on earth are these 2 things considered equal? One is an RNG shitshow that lacks the ability to even become more powerful, and the other is an incarnate god. Imagine playing with your friends and you decide to play summoner without knowing what you're in for. Fuck that. Aside from class-specific stuff, there's a metric buttfuck of items out there to encounter in the game, with so many different situations you'll find them in. Rod of Discord, for instance. I wouldn't even bother grinding for that, however. Good luck farming that shit. Some of these items you might stumble across are so good, or so fun, that you might change what class you were going to make that armor for, just so you can use that item more. And that's truly a great feature of the progression in Terraria. Most of this style of explore, mine, loot, farm, and fight lends to some of the most engaging gameplay you can have in any experience, especially when played with friends.
No, why am I even bothering? Being clever is overrated.
I wanted a Daedalus at one point, which required that I kill a hallowed mimic with a 25% chance of dropping what I actually wanted. I had to go down into the underground hallow and farm souls of light from the enemies that spawn there. Acquire 15 of them and then turn those into a key of light, which, when placed inside an empty chest, spawns a hallowed mimic. This kind of shit is fun until you do it maybe 7 or 8 times, then it just becomes a boring ass grind. Thankfully, there's many items and methods to help make this process easier, or more automated.
What the hell is this?
Terraria has its own wiring system, not too dissimilar from Redstone, but way easier to understand and use. Upon world generation, there's even some traps that use the wiring to trick you. If you want to use this feature, you'll need to access the mechanic NPC, who sells the stuff. Terraria has NPCs that need housing built by you to live in. If you have a vacant home and say, discover an NPC in the world or perform a certain action, an NPC might move in. Their help is mandatory for your playthrough. A lot of the best items in the game require components or crafting tables sold specifically by NPCs. Could you imagine trying to do a playthrough without the Tinkerer? I don't think so. The same goes for potions. Potions are literally free bonuses that you have very easy access to, especially after the Dryad moves in. It's not hard to craft potions that are extremely useful, so quit deleting your goddamn seeds. I'm watching you. Look, here's the Eater of Worlds without potions. And here's the same boss with potions. Moral of the story is quit being lazy. Besides, they'll definitely come in handy when you encounter the random events the game can send your way. Each of these events have specific enemies and unique loot drops that you'll only find in their own events. All of these events are awesome. It's a shame that it can be so hard to get an event when you need it, however, but they are a welcome wildcard to the overall experience. Terraria is a game that is truly chock full on content, but with so much shit to do, there's bound to be some things that are hit or miss, and some stuff that is downright bad. Like the Summoner. There's no easy way to say any of this and not piss some people off for ragging on their favorite game. But don't worry, it's mine too. I've loved this game since I've had it on release day. But this is a review, and I have some issues with it. The biggest bone I have to pick ties into every other issue in the game. They all stem from this one problem, the progression. Sometimes it's genius. Rather than generating new areas, new stages of the game will utilize old ones and change them for the better. Shit like that is so good. No world is ever truly wasted. But the fact of the matter remains is that the game is nothing without its wiki. I'm 100% serious. Want an item? Wiki tells you how to get it. Want to progress? Wiki has the steps. Want to put a fart in a jar? Wiki's got you covered, and that's an issue. Almost nothing is explained to you in this game. Sure, it's fun exploring and discovering stuff for yourself, and it sure is fun to run all over the map, trying to figure out that throwing a guide voodoo doll into lava will spawn the boss to progress. Wait, no it isn't. That shit is tedious. Without outside help or getting really fucking lucky, how is a new player supposed to know anything about what you do in this game? There are items and weapons that I get towards the end of the game where I'm like, oh thank God I didn't get this earlier, it might have actually been useful. Look, here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Raise your hand if you know what a lava charm is. If you're like me, then you already know where this is going. The lava charm can be used to craft the actual best movement item in the game, and is incredibly useful in the early and mid game. I have spent hours on my current world hunting this damn item. You have 2 methods to acquire the fucking thing, and both have me ripping my hair out. You ready? You're about to get a dose of Terraria. The lava charm can spawn in any gold chest in the cavern layer, which is a huge area it can appear in, but that doesn't change that you'll actually need to find a gold chest first, and sometimes they can be few and far between. Each gold chest has a 2.5% chance of spawning this item. If spending hours scouring the map for it really isn't your cup of tea, you could Reach hard mode, do at least 25 fishing quests from the angler. Every fishing quest after will have a 1 in 75 chance of rewarding you with this particular fishing rod, which allows lava fishing. Or you could use a specific bug net acquired from hell mining and crafting to catch critters in hell to use as bait. Once you have those, you can fish in lava and have a chance of grabbing one of 2 crates that can only come from hell fishing. These crates have a 2.5% chance of giving you a lava charm.
Does that not sound a bit excessive?
Sometimes I really enjoy this strangely specific approach to acquiring certain items, but there has got to be a limit on how bullshit it is to find something. I'd understand if it was a super cool sword or a beautiful vanity item, but it's not. It's a marginally useful accessory, but something that is completely essential for one of the best boots in the game. It's something I spent hours trying to find and failing to do so over and over. I have been through this much of my map, and I still haven't found one. Not even one. What I explained is the overarching issue. Some of the items are almost mandatory for some classes and seem impossible to find. You only need to look at poor Summoner to understand. Other items the game rewards you with were useful like 3 stages ago. Master Mode is genuinely arse and is just a dying simulator. It's not even fun. There's no lesson to be learned, no extra skills to be gained. It's just die and die until you complete a task and then start over. When compared to Expert Mode's release and its grand content update, it's lacking. The only thing that redeems it is when you play it with friends. In conclusion, Terraria is a game that I have sunk many hours into over the course of 9 years. I absolutely adore this game despite its flaws.
Loser! You're a loser!
I think that it is 100% worth playing and that the Steam chart numbers don't lie. You should always be aiming to play it with friends that are committed to a full playthrough. There's nothing worse than organizing 4 or 5 people to play, and then 2 days later you'll end up with just you and the friend that you were going to play it with before you said, should we get more people in? I can't wait for Terraria 2. A new, clean slate with an even clearer vision of what the game is supposed to be is what I hope the sequel can become. Because Terraria's development has just been addition after addition to its experience, and normally that's great, but eventually some stuff will feel tacked on. I mean, look at TF2. So I feel like my gripes with the game will be sorted out once the sequel is released, and the devs have made it with clear goals and roadmaps in mind. Once again, thank you for watching my video, and go play the damn game, or I'll use my 71 subscribers to berate you and tell your mum that you like the taste of licorice. Ugh. Disgusting. Also, for those of you who want to know more on Terraria, Chippy Gaming has been an entertaining watch. I watched his videos after I wrote this script, and it's nice to have some of my opinions validated. I was worried I was going to cop a hate mob for trashing parts of everyone's favorite game. Sorry the review took so long. Terraria is one of those games where there's just a lot to do, and playing the game organically and not cheating, aka downloading Builder's Workshop, is an undertaking on Master Mode, let me tell ya. The upload schedule I aim for is at least 1 review per month, and if I can, I try to aim for a release sometime around the 10th. That's the goal at least. It's not like I'm holding on to completed videos and waiting though. I release them as soon as they're done. So for future reviews, you might get like 2 a month for short games and 1 per month if it's a big game like Terraria. I have a few ideas for the next review. Myth the Fallen Lords, Mordhau, Lego Rock Raiders, and a couple other games. I gave up on Vermintide 2 because it reminded me of a cookie clicker experience. If you have an interesting game, tell me about it, and I might review it. Next up might be a short review on Gunfire Reborn. It's described as Risk of Rain 2 meets Borderlands, and you had me at Risk of Rain. See yous later! Summon your demon, mate.
I already have my demon summoned.
Ha 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 ha. Fuck me.
Darkness!
You're funny.
No parents!